Hello everybody, welcome to Totally Tabled. My name is Shaggy, and today I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm going to answer the burning question on everyone's mind. If I could only own 10 board games for the rest of my life, which 10 would I choose? Now this is a question that kind of made its way around the internet amongst different content creators, and despite myself, I kind of got caught up thinking about it. It took me a long time to whittle it down to just 10, and when I was done, I was kind of surprised by the 10 games I had picked. It's a fun question to think about because you don't want to just pick your 10 favorite games. You need to make sure that you've created a collection of 10 games that will cover every gaming situation. It's harder than it sounds, and it was just tragic having to leave some of these games off the list. Now, it's important to note, the rules that I'm going by for this list is that whatever game I pick, I'm allowed to have all of the expansions that come with that game. That's going to be incredibly important to keep in mind. And since there's really no good way to order this list, I've just decided to do it alphabetically. But enough delays, let's jump right in. So the first game on the list is Cosmic Encounter. I really wanted to have a party game, something that would play great at 5 and 6 players, and that would have that silly party vibe, people negotiating with each other, yelling and screaming and cursing at each other. But the thing is, I hate party games for the most part. And so Cosmic Encounter is the obvious choice. It has all those great party elements, but this is really a party game for gamers. At its heart, it's very simple. You just, on your turn, flip over a card, and you're going to have an encounter with a random player around the table. You have planets with ships on them, and you're going to send a certain number of ships over to one of their planets, and you're trying to take over 5 different planets. That's how you win the game. So you go visit one of their planets. You can ask other players around the table to maybe join your forces to go and attack that planet. And then you're just going to play these attack cards from your hand that have different attack values. You're going to add that up to the fleets that you have, and you're going to have a certain amount of power. And if you have more power than the defender, you get to take over the planet. You can also negotiate with the player and play instead these negotiate cards. If you each play a negotiate card, then you can work out some sort of deal. Maybe you can each get a planet, but you could double cross, and there's all these take that cards that you can play. Is crazy, and what makes it even more crazy is that every player is playing an alien race that has an insane special abilities that radically change the game. And when you add in all the expansions, and there's 6 or 7, there are so many different alien races, so many different cards with special abilities. Truly, no 2 games of this are alike. So this is a perfect fit for this list. That's Cosmic Encounter. The second game on the list is Dominion. I had to have a card game. I love just playing simple classic card games. I've done that for my entire life. Dominion's perfect because it feels like a simple classic card game. And it just has that pace and that feel where your turn's very quick. But it has the added benefit of having thousands and thousands of cards, thousands of different combinations that you can play with to keep the game always changing, always fresh. And now I'm sure you're familiar with Dominion, but if you're not, it's a game that popularized deck building as a mechanism, where you start with a very simple deck, in this case of just 7 money cards and 3 victory point cards. The victory point cards don't do anything, but the money cards let you buy additional cards and add them to your deck. And so then when your deck runs out, you shuffle up your discard pile, and now suddenly you're drawing better and better cards as you buy more and more. Now the clever thing is you have 10 different cards that you can buy, and they're in piles. There's 10 copies of each different card. Each one of those is known as a kingdom. And so at the beginning of the game, you pick out 10 random kingdoms. And each of the cards has special abilities and can combo with other cards in different ways. And with all the expansions, and we're talking, I don't even know, 14, there's a ridiculous number of expansions. There are so many different kingdoms that you're going to have a different set of 10 every time. And so it's great. I can get my simple card game feel that I could play with almost anybody, or I can even get a much more gamery, complex, involved game if I want as well. And enough variability to last forever. And so that's why Dominion is making the list. The next game is Doomtown Reloaded. Now, I talked about this game at length in my top 10 games for 2 players list. Go check that out if you want to know more about the game. Briefly, this is a collectible / living card game. So you're going to be building your own deck out of a massive pool of cards, and you're going to be dueling with another player. This takes place in the Weird West, and you are going to be playing out these locations and characters who are going to be part of your posse. You're going to be giving them guns and horses and all different kinds of items. And you're going to be moving them about the town to these different locations that you're playing out, trying to control them. The locations give you control, and your characters have influence. And if you ever have more control than your opponent has influence on the board, you win. So you either want to get your posse controlling all the different locations, or you want to attack your opponent's posse, killing them, lowering their influence in town. That means you get to have these Old West style shootouts, and you resolve these shootouts by playing poker, because every card in your deck doubles as a regular playing card. And there's just this amazing system for playing poker and being able to cheat, and you can play these action cards if someone's cheating to get them back. It's incredibly fun. And I just love, love, love building decks in this game. I usually hate that in collectible card games and living card games, but here it's just so much fun because each of these cards is multi-purpose. There's so many different layers and interesting things that you can do with your decks, and there's so many cool cards with great characters. There's so much personality and life in this game, and it is a lifestyle game. This is a game that has so much going on. There's so much game here that it would take you a lifetime to be able to explore it all. That is Doomtown Reloaded. The 4th game on the list is Gloomhaven. This is a bit of a no-brainer for me. I love Gloomhaven. Now, if I'm allowed to take the whole trilogy of Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, and Frosthaven, that would definitely be a no-brainer. Now, that feels like I'm cheating a little bit, so I'd probably say Frosthaven since I haven't played it yet. But either way, you know I'm taking Gloomhaven with me. Epic dungeon crawl, hundreds of hours of gameplay, great solo, great co-op, however you want to play it. Uses this fantastic card system where you have a hand of cards that you're using to do everything. And each card has a top ability and a bottom ability. And you're going to play out 2 cards, and you're going to use the top ability on one of them and the bottom ability on the other. And as you play these cards out, they're also doubling as your stamina, because when you run out of cards in your hand, you have to take those cards back up by resting, and you're going to lose a card. And so as you go on and as you play these cards, you're slowly losing them out of your deck. And so there's this real sort of puzzly feel where you need to complete the objective of the scenario, get through that particular dungeon before you run out of cards. Really satisfying game. I love the leveling up. I love getting the loot. I love the stories and the different characters and getting better and better cards into your deck. This had to be one of my 10 games that I would keep forever. That's Gloomhaven, or perhaps Frosthaven. The next game is Kanban EV. I could not have a heavy Euro, and Lacerda is my favorite. It was really hard to pick between the different Lacerdas. It's painful to be only able to keep one. I went with Kanban EV because it's still my favorite. This is actually the first one that I've done a full solo playthrough of, so you can go check that out. But one of the things that really pushed this one over the edge for me to include it on this list is because I do think it plays so well at a lot of different player counts. I think it's great all the way from solo all the way to 4 players. I really like it at 4. And I think it has a lot of replayability in it because of the interaction between the players with that worker placement mechanism. If If you don't know, this is a worker placement game where you only have one worker, and you're moving that worker to different locations, and there aren't that many. And so the board is really crowded. People are constantly getting in your way, blocking you from where you want to go. And the order in which you activate your workers, going from top to bottom, and then moving your workers also by going from top to bottom, it creates this really fascinating timing and some great decisions about exactly where you want to move your workers and when. It's a very tight, punishing game as you're sort of trying to collect the designs and the parts to build and improve these cars, and then use those to impress your boss, who is constantly moving around and judging your performance. Check out my playthrough to learn more, but yeah, had to have a heavy euro, had to have a Lacerda, and I chose Kanban EV. The sixth game on the list is KLASK. You gotta have a dexterity game. I think a lot of people would forget about that, but dexterity games are perfect for parties, or if you're playing with kids or new gamers and family situations, you gotta have a dexterity game around, and KLASK is my favorite. This is essentially a riff on air hockey, but using magnets. You're holding this little pawn that is controlled by a magnet underneath the board. You're moving it around, and you're simply trying to knock this little yellow ball into your opponent's hole, into their goal. What elevates this game is that, first of all, you can't fall into your own hole. If you do, that's a point for your opponent. And let me tell you, it is really hard to avoid falling into that hole. When you're first starting to play, you're going to be falling into that thing all the time. But the absolute best part of the game is that there are these three little magnets in the middle of the board. And if you ever get two of those attached to your pawn, you lose, and that's another point for your opponent. So it means that you could completely ignore trying to get the ball into the hole and just be knocking those magnets towards them, cluttering up their area and limiting their movement. This is the absolute definition of a minute to teach, a lifetime to master. And it's just one of those games, it just never gets old. And there we go. So that's my number 6, KLASK. The 7th game on the list is Marvel United. Now, this one really surprised me. I did not expect that this would make the list, but I really wanted to have a family cooperative game, something that I could play with my kids, but also something that I really enjoyed playing, something that I could play by myself solo, and something that would have the replayability and the variability to be something that I'd want to keep coming back to forever. And really, there's not a lot of games like that. There's not a lot of kids games or family style games that have that longevity. And to me, Marvel United is. It's one that there's tons of material for now, right? So if you have everything, you have a lot of different options, a lot of different gameplay. And this has that Dominion thing where you can make it very, very simple, or you can really up the complexity or up the difficulty. Now, again, I've done a playthrough for this one a long time ago, so you should check out that playthrough. It's a relatively simple cooperative game. Every hero has their own unique deck. And on your turn, you're just going to be playing a card from that deck. And the cool thing is you get to use the symbols that are on the card that you played and the card that was previously played. And that's really where the cooperation comes in. You can set up the person after you to do something that they need to do by playing a card that will help them, that will synergize with what they're doing. And you're just kind of moving to different locations, rescuing people, fighting bad guys, trying to complete these missions so that you can open up the bad guy to be able to hit them and take away their life. Each different villain adds a unique twist to the formula. And it's just fun, and it's simple, it's quick. You can play a game in like half an hour to 45 minutes. And with all the different heroes and all the different villains to choose from, there's just so much content here that this really does feel like one of those family weight games that has staying power and that has the replayability. And so that's why it's on the list. Kind of a surprise, but there you go. The 7th game, Marvel United. Number 8 is Robinson Crusoe, Adventures on the Cursed Island. This was the first game that I thought of when I heard about this topic. It's the most obvious pick if you are familiar with the channel. I talk about Robinson Crusoe all the time. I've now done 2 playthroughs, so you should go check those out. I did a playthrough really early on of the scenario Jenny Needs Help, and then I just did another playthrough of the scenario Volcano Island. Definitely go check those out if you want to see what Robinson Crusoe is all about. But this is my favorite solo game. It's my favorite cooperative game. And it's perfect for this list because it's scenario based. There are tons of different scenarios with all the promo scenarios, and there's 2 big expansion boxes that add a lot of content as well, add a whole campaign. And each of these scenarios really changes up the gameplay. It's a survival game, so you're going to have your survivors and you're going to be taking actions out on the board, exploring, crafting items, gathering food, and performing the tasks that you need to do for that particular scenario in order to, usually escape the island in one piece. It's a brutally difficult game, but incredibly entertaining, and it tells these amazing survival stories. And it does so with this very simple mechanism of having events that have an immediate consequence, often give you some kind of choice to make, and then that event goes back into the deck and gets redrawn at a later time, and then there's some sort of consequence, usually based on a bad decision that you've made earlier in the game. It's so simple, but it's so effective at telling this emergent story. And I've played this game dozens and dozens of times, and I never get tired of it. It's just a masterpiece, and there was absolutely no way that I was going to leave Robinson Crusoe behind. So there you go, that was number 8. The 9th game on the list is Star Wars Rebellion. I really wanted to have an epic game. I don't like to play these all the time, but every once in a while you just want to have a big, massive, epic, long experience. There's just something about those games that you just can't get from other games. Could have done Twilight Imperium 4th edition, could have done War of the Ring, could have done Eclipse, or maybe Game of Thrones. I just prefer Star Wars Rebellion. I like that it plays so good at 2, and I just love the cat and mouse hide and seek sort of feel where one player is the rebels hiding out on one of the planets, the other player is the Empire searching for the rebel base, and this just feels so much like Star Wars in a box. It's so cinematic. You're going out there if you're the rebels and you're doing all these different missions, sneaking around, infiltrating, sabotaging, doing all that good stuff. And as the Empire, you're building up your fleets, you're building your Death Star, you're blowing up planets. It's just so much fun. And it's just one of those games that you're going to want to have in your back pocket for just when you want to play it. You're not going to want to play it all the time. At the end of the day, I have to have something epic, and I'm going with Star Wars Rebellion. And number 10 is Viticulture. Another big surprise on the list. So many games were jockeying for this position of that medium weight Euro. Such an important category in my gaming life and my collection. And surprisingly, Viticulture won out, mostly because of just how versatile of a game it is. It's incredibly accessible and teachable. Some medium weight Euros are harder to teach than others. I think this one is fairly easy to follow. It's a pretty simple worker placement game. And the theme of making wine really works here, where you're planting the different grapes, you're harvesting them, you're mashing them up, you're making the wine, you're aging the wine in your cellars, and then you're selling it, fulfilling contracts. There's a bunch of fun card play, you're drawing a lot of cards, playing a lot of cards for their special abilities. And what I really love is that it plays so great at all the different player counts, all the way up to 6. But it also plays wonderfully at 2. And I also really enjoy the solo mode. So I think that versatility, its accessibility, the wonderful theme, I'm definitely going to be carrying with me the collector's edition with all the Tuscany expansion stuff. The new board is fantastic. I don't want to play without it. And so while I might prefer games like Great Western Trail or even Dungeon Pets, I think I'm going to have to bring along Viticulture in this particular scenario. So there you go. Those are the 10 board games that I would choose to keep if I was only allowed to own 10 board games for the rest of my life. It was heartbreaking that I couldn't bring along some of my absolute favorites like This War of Mine, Galaxy Trucker, Spirit Island, really close to making the list. But I want to hear from you folks. I want to know, what are some games that you would have to have with you in this scenario? Let me know in the comments. And if you liked the video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.